we've looked at the battle pack, we've looked at the rulebook. Now it's time for the most important question of all. Welcome back to Lindworm Travellers. My name is Hydra, and at last we come to the big one. Is Warcrow the Wargame actually any good? But before we do, a quick reminder that to celebrate hitting 2,000 subscribers, we're giving away a copy of the Winds from the North Battle Box and the full Warcrow rulebook from us, the Dice Gods, posted for free to your door. To win, you just need to comment on each video that we've posted, including the ones we've posted since our last channel update on 15th of July, and all videos up until the 2nd of August. Each comment gets you an entry and a chance to win. If that's not enough, becoming a channel member and supporting the Dice Gods for less than €3 will make each comment count for 5 entries. Just hit the join button by the title of this video to get right on that and support us as we grow. So let's have a quick recap of what Warcrow is. Corvus Belli have said that Warcrow is a unit-sized wargame for 2 players, played on a 3-foot by 3-foot board. A standard game of 250 points will include around 20 miniatures and take, from my experience, between 1.5 to 2 hours to play. The miniatures in your army may be an individual character or organised into units of multiple minis. The game itself has a high fantasy setting, so in-game you're looking at lots of sword action, bows, some firearms, magic, cavalry and mystical beasts. Warcrow already has some impressive lore, and the stated intention is that this will be a narrative-heavy game. Each game will be played using a scenario which defines the objectives, win conditions, number of rounds and how many turns you have per round. A round consists of a number of turns. During a turn, each player may activate a single unit once. At present, an average scenario has 3 rounds and 5 turns, so that's 15 activations in total during the course of the game. That does mean that for larger games, not all of your force will activate in a single round. But don't worry, if they don't move or do anything, there's a no one left behind phase at the end of the turn where inactivated units can move. Your scenario will also define if there are any events which occur during a turn in your game. This could be a weather condition, monster appearing, or a wealth of other possibilities. The turns, plus many other effects and events in the game, are tracked on the turn tracker. This little guy is central to a lot of elements of the game. For example, if a unit breaks and flees, you track when they can try to rally on the turn tracker. Also, if you cast a spell with an effect that has a duration, you mark on the tracker when that effect is to stop. Character information is given on unit cards, which are included in the box when you buy your minis. This includes movement, wounds, willpower, the dice to use when attacking and when defending. The cards also include abilities and special skills, as well as a section which tells you how the character changes the stats of a unit when that character is attached to a unit. In-game, this card is where you track the effects on your unit, like damage, spells, stress. This also allows lots of things to happen to your unit without you needing to move massive tokens around the board with the minis. As you play the game, you'll be using custom elements to complete core functions. Movement is done in strides. Each stride is 15mm, but Corvus Belli has designed and provides widgets and a range ruler for convenient measuring. Also, the game uses custom 8-sided dice with symbols on them, rather than numbers. A set of Warcrow dice has 3 different colours, each for defence and 3 for attack. The colour is an indication of how potent that dice is. Red attack dice have more successes on them than the orange or yellow, for example. In terms of game mechanics, we have an alternating activation process where each player activates 1 unit per turn, so you won't be waiting for your opponent to activate all of their minis before you get your go. Also, when you make dice rolls, whether it be attacking or defending, you will be doing it against your opponent. If you are attacking, then your opponent can block, cancel and even counter-attack using their defense dice. If that's the gist of the what Warcrow is, then let's talk about what it isn't for a minute. Warcrow is not Infinity. That may sound like a weird thing to say, but there's been a lot of assumptions made about the system, and that's one of them. Warcrow certainly comes from the same studio, but it's not a reskin of Infinity. Yes, you'll see some of the DNA of Infinity here, like in the dice rolls, but to assume that they are the same or similar games would be a big mistake. Also, Warcrow isn't an established game. This is version 1. Even though this has been on the cards for well over 10 years, we're looking at a brand new, just being released system. That does mean that for the coming months, the minis and factions available are limited. We know that Warcrow is going to get monthly releases, and that we'll hear more about that at Gen Con 2024 seminar, which happens in Indianapolis in the US, August 3rd, 11 AM Eastern Time. That's GMT-4. From there, we'll hear more about when and how the releases of the other factions for the game, there are 6 in total, are going to happen. So keep an eye out on social media on August the 3rd, because the Gen Con event seminar is frequently live streamed. Because this is a version 1, that does mean that some of the rules and examples in the rulebook can take a little thinking to get your head around. Are there as many as in most version 1 systems? In my experience, no, not by a long way. But are they there? Yes, and it would be disingenuous to not mention that fact. Are they a huge issue? No, not at all. Just take some time to read the rules before you play. But then you should always do that with a new system, right? Next, let's take a look at the setting of Lindworm. A fantasy world inhabited by orcs, dwarves, elves and humans. All very safe, tried, tested, and tedious, right? Well, no. Let's take a look at one of the human factions for a second, one that you'll find in the Winds from the North box, the Hegemony of Embuseg, or Hegemony to their friends. These black-clad soldiers with their Eastern European aesthetic and Black Legion are clearly that type of faction, right? One of the bad guys, probably xenophobic, violent, aggressive, oppressive, and no, not really. In fact, in the Winds from the North box, you'll find an elven spellcaster for the Hegemony, and in the expansion, the Beyond box as it's called, you'll find some dwarves. It turns out that Lindworm is a little more nuanced, a little more considered. The closest factions to tropes are probably the Siennan elves who wear green and live in woods, and the Mount Haven dwarves who live under a mountain, but even those have their distinct differences from races that I've seen before. Going back to Hegemony for a second, this is a very inclusive and progressive society that is aiming to achieve safety and security for its people, encouraging different races to come and be part of that aim for the safety and comfort of all of its citizens. No bad guys here, just a society that actually sounds quite interesting to live within. So why are the usual suspects here? Well, the fact you're asking that means you missed the epic interview with Hoopu, and you should go back and watch it. It's quite a long one, takes an axe. But in brief, they're here because games which stray too far from these core ideas and tropes tend to just fail. We gamers think we want new hotness, but mostly we tend to buy things close to what we know. But that's a whole conversation for another day. Suffice it to say, these races are here from a commercial perspective to try and give this system the greatest chance of success, and I get it. I also appreciate the unique spins that's been put on it to each race to make them fresh and different. There is familiar and there is new. And before you, actually me in the comments, yes, there are exceptions to the novel games failing rule, but there are a lot more cases that back up that statement than break it. Right, that's the facts of Warcrow, the outline of the wargame, a very dry discussion of something that's meant to be a hobby. So how about we drop the science and we talk about what really matters here? I have spent a lot of time reading Warcrow, building the miniatures, painting, and planning around it. I've also spent quite some time playing it, and you know what that's taught me? This game is fun. The gameplay feels exciting, engaging, and has real character. The combinations of skills, weapons, and abilities lead to units which are clear and distinct, with factions which have a definite flavour and playstyle. If we look at northern tribes, the orcs, for those who aren't familiar, they're a combat army with magic and skills which are split between damage buffs and intimidating the enemy to reduce enemies' combat ability. But they're not a brute force army. This is a blade you must wield with care and consideration, making your units work together towards a cohesive direction. You can't just charge into the middle and do violence. Well, you can in Alborg, but yeah, as a rule, you're looking at a much more considered approach that's needed for these guys. Going back to our friends in the hegemony, it's more about being a rock upon which the enemy breaks. Hold the line, then push them back. Outlasting the foe, wearing them down, then choosing the moment to strike with deadly precision. Gameplay for Warcrow is quick, even for new players, smooth and easy to pick up. There are details and skills you'll need to learn, but they don't feel overwhelming. From getting the game to throwing dice, it's not going to take you that long. And decisions in game have weight, with you needing to consider which units you plan to activate and which are just going to move up at the end of the round. The scenarios are interesting and lend themselves to experimentation for lists and tactics. What I really enjoyed is that feeling that, having played, I could play again now, maybe try something different, make a different move, engage at a different time. I want to play Warcrow and have real, genuine fun when I'm doing it. Is it perfect? No. The turn tracker is a bit of a concern for larger games. Will it get swamped in tokens? The printed cards are great, unless they get updated, then what? Is there a way to make the dice accessible to people who are colourblind? These are things which could be different, but nothing that I actually dislike and nothing which really negatively impacts my playing experience. But this is a game that sits in a sweet spot. You can play this competitively, you can play this for narrative, and you can play it for giggles. The rule set is both deep and simple enough to cater for all of these scenarios perfectly well. Will that last? That will depend on the balance of the units and the factions which are released in the months and years ahead. It will also depend on the community, feedback, and how things develop. We've yet to see the tournament system for these guys. There's so much more to come. But for the most part, I trust Corvus Belli to make wise moves, and I'm optimistic to see what they do. So far, we know that there's an army builder app coming, the tournament rules, narrative rules, and monthly releases for the system, starting in September with the Beyond Winds from the North box. There's a roadmap, and it looks good. In the end, is it any surprise that we love the game? After all, look at the channel. We moved to 2 videos per week to push this system. We have got Infinity all over the place. We've sat down and spoken to Hoopu. I'm a Warcraw. It's a no-brainer. Of course we're going to love it, right? I mean, obviously. Well, actually no. And when it was first announced, I had no interest. On the face of it, there's a lot of stuff I specifically don't like. I don't like high fantasy games. I love reading high fantasy or watching it, but playing it, no. Where are the machine guns? Can I get a spaceship? I'm so lost and confused. I played a bit of Warhammer Fantasy in the early 90s, then some Age of Sigmar. There's a bit of fantasy in Malifaux, but really, no thank you. This stuff doesn't interest me, it doesn't engage me, it doesn't fire me up. And custom dice, I mean, they work in Legion, but I'd rather not. What if I want to get fancy custom ones? I can't get fancy custom dice, it just isn't a thing. Custom distances, I have tape measures for this. I don't need more widgets to store. A forest of more tokens, could we not? An odd scale of 34mm. Why? God, yet. Yeah, here we are. Warcrow is, to me, a rare thing in wargaming. It is first and foremost a damn good time. This is a fun system to play. There's enough depth here to go as competitive as you want, and enough flex that you can play it as a casual game. It'll do both well, and you'll have fun either way. As I say, is it perfect? No, but it is a solid foundation with some pretty minis and an enthusiastic company with, for me, a solid track record behind them. I don't always agree with the decisions that Corvus Belli makes. I'm an Akon Cemento player at my very core, and can we get them? But Warcrow feels like the start of something. It's a statement. It is the beginning. And it's something we're excited to be part of. And honestly, any of this looks interesting to you, so should you. If you're still on the fence, you can find a link to the Corvus Belli Warcraw map in the description. That includes the location of all the volunteer demo team for CB. If you'd like to try out Warcrow, reach out to your local Warcraw and see if they can give you a demo. Or head to a wargaming convention. Corvus Belli is attending so many, and Warcraws are doing even more. Give it a try and thank me later. So what do you think? Have you tried Warcrow yet? Do you plan to, or have you just jumped straight in? Let us know in the comments and instantly be in with a chance to win a copy of the Winds from the North Battle Box and Warcrow rulebook from us in the process. And yes, I know if you've already pre-ordered it, that doesn't make sense, but look, Christmas gift for a friend. Something to get your buddies involved too. That's genius. Do it. Comments. Let's go. Thanks as ever to our YouTube member army. There's so many more of you all of a sudden. Especially including our friend Joe Rogers, who's been with the channel longer than is healthy, as we've said. And to our Patreons, you guys are helping make Warcrow coverage on here happen, and so thank you for that. Speaking of, next week's video will be looking ahead to the future releases of Warcrow and what we know so far. But if all goes well, we should have a Warcrow battle report for you very soon. If you want to see that battle report, give the video a thumbs up. Make sure you're subscribed and ring the bell to be notified of all our good stuff. Thank you for watching, and we will see you all again soon.